set this up. So, the place is the captain's quarters aboard the Jolly Roger in Neverland. Time. While Neverland exists in imagination and outside of time, stylistically this will look something like the 1700s, the era of the classic pirate. Setting. The captain's quarters aboard the Jolly Roger, along with the standards of the captain's quarters, rolled up maps on an old table, etc. There are a wall-mounted map of Neverland, a chalkboard, and a skeleton, which wears his hat and his sword, belt, and sword. His sword, belt, and sword. The quarters also contain a small kitchen with an oven, and on a shelf, a container clearly marked poison. Upstage, there is a door leading to the deck of the Jolly Roger. At rise, as the lights slowly come up, we see Captain Hook sitting in a comfortable chair while reading the book Peter Pan and Wendy and singing to himself. Okay, so we begin.
Yo ho, the pirate life, the flag of skull and bones. A merry hour, a hemp and rope and hay for Davy Jones. A vast fillet, yo ho, heave to, a pirating we go. And if we're parted by a shot, we're sure to meet below. Well, there you are. Very good, very good. Just a bit of light reading here. I suppose I should introduce myself. Well, I suppose you already know who I am, don't you? Don't you? Who am I? Go ahead, who am I?
Captain Hook.
Oh, very good, very good. A smart one, very good. You are so clever. Now, what gave it away? Was it perhaps my name on the program? Well, yes, I am the famous, the infamous Captain Hook, Captain James Hook. And you can call me James, if you dare. I know what some of you are thinking. How can that be Captain Hook? How did not Hook meet his demise as a prehistoric reptile's lunch? Well, reports of my demise are greatly exaggerated, though I confess myself a little surprised. Of course, Captain Hook is not my real name, not the name with which I was born. Would you like to know my birth name? The name by which the real world knows me?
Yes.
To reveal who I am really, even now, would set the country ablaze. It would shake the world to its foundation. Are you ready? Prepare yourselves. Here you go. My real name is Patrick Stewart. Just kidding, a joke. My real name is, well, we'll save it for later. Don't want to give all the goodies away too early, do we? Of course, I'm known as Captain Hook. Because of this beauty. This masterpiece, this object d'art. Beautiful in form and function, quite useful. Do not call it handy. This item of brilliance is a vast improvement over the appendage it replaced. Perfect for sliding along zip lines. Or fishing. I don't need a rod and reel. Just put a little bait. Yeah. Put it in the water, wiggle, 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 wiggle. Here it comes. Catch! Fresh tuna steaks for everyone. And in combination with my pirate sword, a lethal addition. Sword fighting lesson, yes. Allow me to introduce my assistant, Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones, audience, Mr. Bones. What was your name before you were Mr. Bones? Ah, yes, Skylights. Let me tell you about Skylights. He was for a time a member of my crew. He committed the unforgivable sin of stumbling into me, ruffled my lace collar. So I gutted him like a fish. Perhaps that seems severe. Allow me to state my case. A pirate's life is a dangerous life, yes? A pirate captain requires his crew to be stealthy, sneaky, and in combat, precise. Clumsiness and carelessness in a pirate are not mere character flaws. A clumsy pirate will rustle the leaves, will noisily snap the twig underfoot, and swing his cutlass too wide and injure a fellow pirate. Will stumble and ruffle another man's shirt. And we cannot underestimate the importance of maintaining a fashionable visage. My actions may seem cruel to the non-pirate, but for pirates of Neverland, death can come at any moment. One cannot be too careful. And I do look good, don't I? Fashion maketh the man. Vastis virum facit. Someone said that, I'm sure. Well, I just did. Also, it was already well established that I may have some anger issues. Skylights should have known that. So clearly, he brought this on himself. Also, what sort of name is Skylights for a pirate? I ask you, Skylights might as well have been bay window or sliding patio door. Hello, I'm the dreaded pirate sliding patio door. Hear my name and tremble. Well, Skylights is much better off now. Happier too, I'd say. Just look at that smile. And more appropriately named, Mr. Bones at your service.
There is a sound what could be interpreted as the bellow of a crocodile, if one is familiar with such a sound.
On to the lesson. What is a sword? This is a sword. I studied the art of sword whilst at Eton, my favorite course. Better than Latin or Greek or arithmetic or literature or etiquette, though proper etiquette is very important. I tried to pass on these lessons to my crew. Soup should be consumed quietly. One should sit down at the table with a sense of grace. Do not speak with your mouth full. Pardon me. Elbows off the table. The dessert food and cake fork should be set above the plate. Wipe your mouth with your napkin, not your shirt sleeve. Farting noisily is discouraged. Honestly, it was such a test of my patience. It would be easier teaching a ferret to do a proper waltz, or a polka to a panda. But they were making progress. Smee was able to set a proper table, and Bill Jukes had started using a butter knife instead of just grabbing the butter with his fingers. Progress. Yeah. Fencing. Fencing is the gentlemanly art of poking little holes into your opponent until they resemble a spaghetti colander. Poke, poke, poke. Poke, poke, poke. If you were attacking your opponent, as if you were attacking your opponent with a nicely decorated ice pick, you see. The gentlemanly posture is important, like a ballet dancer. Maintain form. Proper fencing is not merely defeating one's opponent. It is about looking good whilst doing it. It is not screaming like a banshee and flailing like you ate a bunch of hot peppers. No, no, no. This I learned at Eton. However, between you and me, Eton was not appreciative of an individual's sense of style. Stodgy they were, Fencing is a fine skill, but poke, 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 poke. Well, it lacks flair. My instructor did not appreciate my ingenuity, my sense of the theatrical. A pirate must have flair. A pirate's cutlass has an edge, and that edge is meant to be used with flair.
He demonstrates several moves on Mr. Bones.
Slice, cut, swish, poke, poke, poke.
Bounce on Mr. Bones.
Slice, oh. Mr. Bones seems to have lost his head. See what happens when you lose control, Mr. Bones? No dessert for you. Lesson learned, I hope. Alas, warrior. I knew him, Horatio.
He looks around and finally places his skull on a table.
Now, do not, I must say, do not try this at home. Instruction is key. Years of instruction and discipline. You do not want to simply go at it at your home and accidentally knock the vase from the table and have your mother penalize you with no dessert for 6 weeks. 6 weeks! No cakes, no pies, no tarts, no cookies, no brownies, no lady fingers, no baklava, no lemon meringues, no petitfours. So unfair. And the icy look she gave. Those cold, cruel stares as if that were torment enough. Well, where was I? Lesson learned, flair, sword fighting, gentlemanly art, walking ferrets, dreaded pirate sliding patio door, lethal addition. Ah, yes! The marvelous, glorious, like say, totally awesome did.
Demonstrates Mr. Bones again.
You can catch your foe's blade, trap it, snap it, or my favorite, use your sword to open a path to your foe and then pierce him, gut him, shred him, hook him. One moment.
Hook puts down his sword, he goes to the oven, puts on a mitt, opens the oven door, and pulls out a couple of cake pans. He sets the line after.
Give that a few good minutes. Smells good. Smells very good. Now, where was I? Catch, trap, pierce, snap, gut, shred. And that's why I'm known as Captain Hook. It's even fun to say. Captain Hook. Of course, it would have been better if I had been born with this instead of that lesser appendage I once had. And I suppose you already know the villain responsible for separating me from that appendage. And then, who then tossed said appendage into the mouth of that crocodile and then laughed about it. Peter Pan. Peter Pan. Peter Pan. Peter Pan. Pan. Why does everyone like him so much? He is not a good person.
From a cabinet he pulls some accoutrements of an English barrister, like a robe and a tight white hair wig, and picks up the book and opens to a specific page.
Your Honor, please allow me to present to the court. Exhibit A, his directions to Neverland. Second to the right and straight on till morning, he tells the poor innocent children. So they think it will take but one night, so they follow him. Fly, 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 fly. But it takes several days, no, longer. Many moons, it says here. Months, during which the poor, darling children would at times fall asleep from exhaustion and drop from the sky like stones. And Wendy would have to plead to Peter Pan to save them, which he would do only at the last second, because he thought he was being so clever. Oh, they flew for so long that the poor darling children were not only exhausted, but also hungry, starving. Meanwhile, Peter Pan would occasionally pop off for some little adventure on his own, and when he'd eventually return, he could barely even remember their names. So right from the beginning, we have manipulative lying, child negligence, abandonment, and reckless endangerment. We haven't even landed yet. Exhibit B. Pan claims he has killed tons of pirates. Oh, never in their sleep, of course. I would wake him first and then kill him. Members of the jury, this may sound honorable, but let's play out the scenario.
He demonstrates with Mr. Bones.
Let's do a little role play. You are a pirate. Pirate. Having a nice little snoozy nap, gold doubloons dancing happily in your head, all right? You feel a little nudge, a little tickle in your toe, perhaps. You open your eyes, you're groggy, everything's blurry. Oh, hello, who was that in front of me? Stab, 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 stab. Nothing honorable about that, is there, Mr. Bones? It is only when Peter... Oh, Exhibit C. In Peter Pan's absence, things are usually quiet on the island. When pirates and lost boys meet, they merely bite their thumbs at each other. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir? I do bite my thumb, sir. It is only when Peter Pan is present that these things become bloody. Ergo, Peter Pan is an instigator. So now we have incitement of violence. Undeniable. Exhibit D. The boys on the island vary in numbers, according as they got killed and so on. When they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out. Thins them.
We hear the bellow of a crocodile.
Stephen Alms fish, I am in the middle of something, you will have to wait.
Takes off the banister and accoutrements.
You would think that an animal that can float on water, looking like a log for hours at a time, would be a patient creature. But generally, personally, that has not been my experience.
Goes to the cake pans and empties the cake sheets onto the counter.
That's the crocodile out there, you know. The one who considers me to be a man of excellent taste. You do know the story, yes? The crocodile who dined on my absent appendage. The crocodile who pursued me specifically from that moment on. The crocodile whose approach I could hear from the sound of the ticking clock inside his gullet. The crocodile who later, when that internal clock had ceased its tick-tock, tick-tock, was able to stiffly approach the Jolly Roger. The crocodile who then opened his mouth wide, so when my last encounter with Peter Pan had reached its denouement, yes, I speak French. And I found myself bested. I willingly sent myself into the beast's yawning cavity as one greeting an old friend. Flurry at a terror? Well, I did not anticipate how slowly a crocodile's digestive system operates. Turns out you can spend an awful lot of time in the cold-blooded creature's stomach, just waiting for something to happen. For things to be over and done with. Odds, bobs, hammer, and tongs, there's no hurry in there at all. It's like being in line in the lobby at the DMV. Just waiting for your number to be called. So, there I was, in the belly of the beast, nothing to do but dwell on the fact that no one loves me, except the one who just ate me. Several days passed, I assume. I couldn't say for sure. It's very dark in there. And then I noticed the creatures surrounding me had grown curiously restless, unable to relax. And then a thought came to my marvelous brain. As I find it difficult to sleep without the sound of the waves lapping against the hull of the Jolly Roger, well, Perhaps the crocodile? I felt around in the dark. Surely it must still be here somewhere. And finally, my hand sat on the clock. You know the one. Yes? And then I said, loudly as I could, if you release me from your gullet, I shall wind the clock so that you can hear the tick-tock, and you can finally get some sleep. The beast stopped moving, and all was quiet, but for the gurgling of the innards around me. I shouted once again, pat your belly 3 times if you agree to my terms. Then quiet once more, and finally, pat, pat, pat. With that, I wound the clock. Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. And with some effort, the creature expelled me from its gaping maw. Not a pleasant experience, but far better than being digested, I expect. Of course, everything had to be dry cleaned. With such fine attire, it is quite expensive. A substantial amount of treasure, I assure you. Of course, most of my crew had just been killed off by that dastardly, murderous, child-neglecting instigator, Peter Pan. So, for the time being, I was saving a lot by not having to pay pirate salaries. So, there is a silver lining, I suppose. Pity, not a real silver. But you can't have everything, can you? Well, that's crocodile. We now have an arrangement, he and I. She and I? He, she. I have no idea of the gender of that beast. How does one tell? Well, they and I, we have an arrangement. When the clock stops its tick-tock, 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 Crookie comes to me, opens wide, I dive in, as greeting an old friend, Maria Katona. Turn, 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 tick-tock, tick-tock, once again, and out I bleh. And Bob's your uncle. And it's about that time once again, and somebody is getting a little impatient. Speaking of eating, do you like cake?
Oh, goes in the cabinet, pulls out on the neighbor, which he puts on. He starts to assemble the cake, putting the layers together and agonizing as he continues talking, the alternates between working on the cake and stepping forward to address the arguments.
I love cake. I make a killer cake. When I decided to become a pirate, I was bold. I went right to Blackbeard himself, stood on the deck of his ship, the Queen's and Revenge, and I said to him, Captain Blackbeard, I wish to become a member of your crew. And Blackbeard said, you think you can be a pirate? And what is it you think you can do? And I said, I can handle a sword better than most, I'm sure. So prove yourself then, or die. He exclaimed, and he tossed me a sword, and 3 of his crew set upon me. I was wearing a modern English coat and tie, so they did not think much of me. But little did they know, I had trained and eaten. I dispatched them all, 3 of them, in short course. Blackbeard was amazed. Impressive. Tell me, sir, what is your name? My name, sir. My real name. Sir, prepare to be shaken to your core. My real name is Benedict Cumberbatch. Jokes. You'll just have to wait to hear my real name. Well, just like that, I was a pirate. Traded the business suit for attire more appropriate to the moment. Though with a bit more flair than your typical pirate, I do have standards. I've seen those portraits, in the British Museum of Sir Gerard Napier, a brilliant red coat trimmed in gold, tricorn hat, posed hand on hip. Of Richard Lumley, red coat, hint of fringed shirt peeking out from the sleeve, hat smartly positioned in the crook of his arm. Sir Hyde Pierce, blue coat, gold trimmed, sword in one hand pointed to the floor, so the other in his pocket of his breeches, his hat stylishly tipped forward, grazing the brim of his eyebrows. Louis de Bourbon-Condé, dark blue coat, light blue sash trimmed with elaborate gold embroidery, a distinguished pose with the left foot forward, cane in one hand, other hand on the hip. Horatio Nelson, oh, even with only one arm. Dark blue jacket voluminously adorned with stars and miniature portraits, gold trim, gold epaulets, and pinned to his tricorn hat a jeweled something that looked like a feather. Oh, given to him by the Sultan of Turkey. My goodness, that man was so spectacularly over-decorated, he didn't even bother with a facial expression. Louis XVI. Oh, really, you can't top Horatio Nelson, but Louis gave a fabulous side eye, and that's worth imitating. Why shouldn't a pirate look as grand? Criminality is no excuse for a lack of sophistication. Blackbeard asked me if I had any other skills of which he could make use, and I replied, I can organize. I am the most organized pirate you have ever known. So I quickly became Blackbeard's bosun. As his previous one hadn't been very good, and he was one of the 3 I recently dispatched. A bosun, if you don't know, must plan and schedule the crew. Someone has to do it, it's not all carousing and fighting. Though, not all pirates seem to know that. A pirate must be organized. But then, oh, the adventures we had. Slaloming around Scylla's gnashing teeth while racing the straits of Messina, Charybdis nipping at our stern. Trading cannon fire with the Flying Dutchman, engaging sword versus sword with the ghostly crew on the stormy seas round Cape Horn, the shore littered with the shredded shipwrecks of those foolish enough to precede us. Raiding the Spanish galleons of the West Indies fleet with Barbecue himself, Long John Silver. In search of valuable treasure, gold, jewels, silks, sugar. His parrot, by the way, is quite the conversationalist. Spoke 4 languages, though he only understood 2. And then one day, while anchored in Kidd's Creek, we found ourselves set upon a surprise attack by the Lost Boys. And soon I found myself facing their leader, Peter Pan himself. It was a brilliant encounter, a fantastic squabble. We had gone round and round. I had chased him from bow to stern and back again, he flying out of reach of my whistling blade, I parrying and dodging his every stab and thrust and kick, until finally I was able to catch him by his foot and fling him down to the deck. Gaining the upper hand, I had him. By Caius and Balbus, I had him! And then I paused. For merely a moment, it was the gentleman in me, I tell you. Well, in a proper duel, the victor, before separating their opponent's soul from their body, the victor should congratulate their opponent on a duel well fought, shouldn't they? Good show, old chap, good form. Why, thank you, sir, I did try my best. Of course you did. I do hate to dispatch such a worthy opponent, but here we are. Do as you must, kind sir. Well, of course, here we go. Boop, boop, boop. Oh. Well, Pan rudely took advantage of my gentlemanly hesitation, and with a quick flash of his blade, divorced my hand from my wrist. Adding insult to injury, he picked up my bleeding hand from the deck and tossed it into the gaping maw of a passing crocodile. That crocodile, who had heard the commotion and set himself nearby in hopes that something edible might fall his way. Well, his lucky day, or hers, I don't know. Adding, it was difficult after that. For a while. You see, pirates can be quite ruthless. Now, I know pirates are supposed to be ruthless to everyone else. Oh, but if you have the slightest moment of weakness, well, worse than playground bullies. There's no support groups, you see, for struggling pirates. No psychotherapists are on board to whom you can unload your troubles. Need a hand? They'd say, laughing. They all thought they were so original with that one.
You know what all the ladies like the most, said? He never gets too handsy.
Boy, what has one hand that likes finger foods? Crocodiles! Oh,
You all right, mate? Something seems to be eating you. Wretches.
He returns his attention to the cake.
if I hadn't become a pirate, I might have become a baker. If my parents had been supportive of that type of thing. Not that they would have supported me becoming a pirate. It's not the sort of thing the muckety-mucks brag about in their elite soirees. You walk by a bakery, and the smell of the place just pulls you right in. The scent of fresh rye bread. Oh, something a bit sweeter, a pumpkin loaf. The hint of cinnamon and nutmeg. I'm more of a dessert man myself. Cobblers, frosted sweets with sprinkles on top, dainty lady fingers, chocolate fudge that browns your lips with that lasting hint of bittersweet. Could you imagine? The sign above the door. Pirates, pies, and pastries. Oh, cutlasses, cookies, and cakes. Oh. Hooks, hot buns. Oh. Maybe not. Mother and father would never allow me the joys of baking at home. Focus on your studies, they would say. We have high expectations of you. Of course, I would not be surprised if my younger brother was given free rein to sculpt the flour, eggs, and sugar into some form of delectable confection. My recommendation to any of you who are or will be a sibling, be the younger one. Younger ones get freedom. Older ones get expectations. I was expected to go into finance, to balance books, to be an Ebenezer Scrooge. I didn't want to be Ebenezer Scrooge. I didn't want to be a humbug, so I ran away. Not long after that. Tell me, who here wants to be a pirate? Show of hands. Or hooks. Come on, move. Oh. Okay, you can put your hands down. Who here would like to be a lost boy? Again, show of hands. Oh. Very good, all right. Now, who, as I'm sure you know, when Wendy went to Neverland, she was not given the option of being a lost boy. They wanted her to be a mother to a bunch of rowdy little urchins, to clean their messiness, to mend their clothes, and to sew their pockets. No sword fighting adventures for her, so show of hands, who would like to mend clothes and sew pockets and clean up after a bunch of messy boys? Lost boys had to be boys. Mothers had to be girls. But pirates? Well, nothing in the rule book requiring pirates to be of a male personage. We are not misogynistic. Pirates are so much more open-minded, free thinkers we are. And most pirates can't even read the rule book anyway. Really, it is a matter of having a broad pool of candidates. Perhaps we should expand our reach. Maybe a recruitment day with the Girl Scouts. Oh, the cookies. I believe the persons of female personage have the potential to be just as murderous as Bill Jukes or Noodler or Alf Mason. Certainly more than Gentleman Starkey. We'll leave it, certain of it. History has several. Anne Bonny, Mary Read, Chang E. Sao, Grace O'Malley. Pirates are very progressive. Did you know, in the original production of Peter Pan, J.M. Barrie originally considered a woman play the role of me? True. The woman playing Mrs. Darling was to double as Hook, but the actor playing Mr. Darling pestered Mr. Barrie to let him take the role, and there it went. Personally, I think a woman would have made a great me. Women are terrifying creatures. You then. You could be terrifying, couldn't you? I'm sure. Show me your terrifying face. Good. Oh. Very good, very good. You are quite terrifying. Just look at Mr. Bones. You frightened him right out of his skin. Now, what I want you to do, as soon as our little show is over, I want you to find a group of little children. Terrorize them. Make them scream and cry. Just a little. It's great fun, I tell you. You won't be disappointed. Why would anybody want to be a lost boy anyway? I don't know. There is a time limit, you know. You eventually get too old for it. And if you don't have the good fortune to die first. There's no shortage of examples of lost boys being killed in battle, or eaten by lions, or tigers, or bears. Oh my. Or those mermaids. They may seem friendly enough, but I tell you there's something fishy about them. It might be just as well, you know. Most boys have little sense of how to feed themselves, how to maintain proper diet, and no sense of good hygiene at all. If they don't get killed, they'll certainly die of their own accord. One thing I must say about Eton, they did teach good hygiene and proper nutrition. If you did not wash on a regular basis, keep yourself clean behind the ear, comb your hair, if you did not eat your vegetables, drink your milk, use proper silverware, and clean your plate, why, you could expect a beating. Though really, it didn't take much to earn a beating. Hiccups, grammatical mistakes, dandruff, squeaky shoes, sneezing, coughing, rainy days, that nagging feeling of, I'm sure you did something you shouldn't have, even though I don't know what it is. Yeah. Friday was flogging day. Flogging Friday. Captain Hook, Peter Pan, flogging Friday. Show of hands. Who here would like to be flogged every Friday? Hey, no, I don't want to know. What was I talking about? Ah, yes, adventures. And losing my... Well, though that interlude with the Lost Boys and Pan did seem to be a low point in my piratic career, I was not going to let that be my final curtain. As the saying goes, when you fall, you have to dust yourself off and get right back up on the seahorse. I may have lost a hand, but I was soon outfitted with this gleaming apparatus. Every problem is an opportunity. Every cloud has a silver hooked lining. And Blackbeard was so impressed by my strength of will that he decided I deserved my own ship and that I should go off on my own adventures. I was given one of the finest in our fleet, along with the select group of the most murderous pirates as my crew. along with Smee. He himself was not particularly murderous, but I did need a specialist to maintain my wardrobe. And none was better than needle and thread than Smee. I suspect perhaps he was a tailor before he chose the pirate life. Thus, I became captain of the Jolly Roger, and my crew and I set off in search of more great adventures. Show of hands, who here would like to be a pirate? No, wait, I already asked that. How about, who here would like to be a chartered accountant? You can shuffle papers and keep the financial ledgers determining things like asset depreciation, and which is a process of deducting the expenses of an asset over its usable lifespan, potentially creating several benefits, such as reporting as a more accurate net value of an asset and lowering the taxable income over time, and things like inventory evaluation, which involves perpetual inventory systems and periodic inventory systems. And of course, there's the first in, first out methods of periodic inventory systems, and the first in, first out methods and valuation, etc., etc. And then there's the even non-cost methods of valuation, etc., and gross profit methods, etc. And it doesn't sound, you can have a simple little desk and a remarkable brown suit. Doesn't that sound exciting? You there. Would you prefer perpetual inventory systems or sailing the high seas in search of adventure?
Seas.
Yes. And if I would ask you if you could be a lost boy, but you're a girl and you're too old. Mr. Bones, chartered accountant or pirate? Give us a frown for chartered accountant and a smile for pirate. That clearly looks like a smile to me. In spite of it all, he would still rather be a pirate. Good choice. What else could I have been? Perhaps a boxer? I'm told I have a wicked left hook. Or maybe a professor. I've always liked psychology. Psychopiratology.
One goes to the cabinet and pulls out the accoutrements of a professor, such as a round-framed spectacles and a tweed jacket with elbow pouches. With a bit of flourish, he puts on his accoutrements and starts to speak with an over-the-top German accent.
Oh, crap. It'll be fine. I just have to get on with my tale. Willkommen! Willkommen, class. Open your books to page 462. I am your professor, Dr. James Sigmund Freud Hook. PhD, MPS, OMG, LOM. I hope you have kept up with your reading. Yes? Very good. We shall now examine the mindset of the non-aging Neverlandian young. What traits do we find in him? First, the terrible, horrible, no good treatment of others. Treats those around him like dogs. This is different from a pirate captain treating his crew like dogs. In that case, it is a description they expected. Okay? Second, the selfishness. Look, everything is me, I, okay? Third, the lack of guilt or empathy. The non-aging Neverlandian feels no remorse for harm caused to others. You die. Who cares? Move on. Okay. Fourth, the untrustability. One day they are like, come play with me. The next day they are like, you are so old, go away. Blah. Okay. What we clearly see here is called a Venn diagram. It is called a Venn diagram because when you put these things together, we see that the non-aging Neverlandian is without a doubt a narcissistic sociopath. And the only way to manage a narcissistic sociopath is to poke and slice and repeatedly and use your pirate sword. Excuse me, I got a little worked up. Oh, I forgot one. Very important, they can be charming. Charismatic. You like them even though you shouldn't, even when you know you shouldn't. So charming that you pretend all those other things don't exist.
He takes off the professorial pajamas.
I know I'm not a narcissistic sociopath because no one likes me. It's true, I know. And envy not hook. No little children love him. They fear him. Which of course was the goal, wasn't it? But is it too much to ask to be feared and loved as well? No, Hook says no. But why is Hook not loved? Why? Is he not witty? Of course he is. Does he not dress with style and panache? Of course he does. And while I do try to inspire fear in everyone that I meet, is it not what teachers do? What parents do with their children and their students? That's what mine did. And do not parents and teachers love their children and their students? I assume they do. They mustn't they? My crew feared me, but only because my love for them was so strong. I loved every one of those wretched refuse. Second, he carved his name into the back of the governor at the prison of Cal. It's the only word he could spell. But he put such care into the effort. Bill Jukes, so covered in tattoos of daggers, skulls, spiders, Mom. Noodler, whose hands were fixed on backwards, donned this thing. He could salute you and carry a bowl of soup. Not a useful skill, but entertaining at parties. Gentleman's stalking, quite dainty in his ways of killing. He's not particularly dangerous, but if he did kill you, rest assured you would have been done in with the grace of a ballet dancer. Skylights. Well, I loved him so much that I killed him. And now look how well he's doing. Let's see, there's Robert Mullins, Alf Mason, and so many others. Can't recall them all, but even so, I recall all those mongrels so fondly. All talented, fearsome pirates. Smee. Well, he's not so fearsome. And yet the children find him adorable. Poor Smee. I nearly clawed him for it, wretched Smee, lest he find out what the children really thought of him. What a horrible burden for a pirate to realize he's considered adorable. But I could not bring myself to do it. It would have been bad form. Smee was the only one to survive our last encounter with the doodle-doo Peter Pan, who hid in the pitch-black belly of the Jolly Roger and dispatched them all one by one. No grand battle to make an exciting climax to the story. No crack of the pistol, no clash of the sword, no once more into the breach, dear friends. Just stab them in the dark. A pathetic way for a pirate to reach their end. Why is it if I were to do the same, to do that such a thing, I would be booed and hissed, wouldn't I? Wouldn't it be bad form to do such as that? And why is it that when Peter Pan does so, he is cheered and called clever? Clever! Once upon a time, there was a little boy. He heard his father and mother talking about what he was to be when he was to become a man. But he didn't want to be a man. He wanted to be a little boy and have fun. So he ran away to Kensington Garden to live amongst the fairies. And he went with them to Neverland, where he would have so many grand adventures and never grow old. And other children would join him in his adventures, and they loved him. And they loved to be with him, even though sometimes they would get killed in battle. Even though sometimes they would have to leave because they would start to grow up, even though they didn't want to. Because all children, except just that one, grow up. And they continue to love him, even never forget him, no matter how old they were, even though he would forget them. Because you forget things that are unimportant to you. The end. The never-ending end.
Hope kicks off his anger.
Once upon a time, there was another little boy. His father was stern and distant. His mother, cool, demanding. He was the eldest of 2 children, and as the eldest, much was expected of him. One day he heard his mother and father talking about what he was to be when he became a man. They said he was to become a chartered accountant, which was, they said, an increasingly respected profession. But the boy did not want to become a chartered accountant, for even though he did not know yet what a chartered accountant was, it surely sounded terrible, and so he ran away. Soon he found himself in an orphanage, and then one night a strange flying boy named Peter Pan came in through the window and told him that he could join him in a fantastical place called Neverland, where there were lovely adventures to be had and no parents. And so he flew with Peter Pan to Neverland, and he became a lost boy. And he had many great adventures, and it was the happiest time of his life. But, like most boys who are not Peter Pan, this boy started to grow taller. Little by little, inch by inch. And then one day, when Peter had returned after being away for several days, the boy welcomed Peter's return. But his voice cracked and lowered. And instead of, "Oh, there you are, Peter Pan," it came out, "Oh, there you are, Peter Pan." And Peter looked at the boy as if he had never seen him in his life. And Peter said, "We have a spy in our midst. Kill him." And the other boys turned on him and kicked him and threw rocks at him and chased him away. The boy, battered and bruised and sad and alone, flew his way back to London. Somehow he remembered the house where he had once lived. And he felt surely that his family had missed him, and that he would be welcomed with open arms and everything would be better. But when his mother saw him, she dragged him by his ear into the sitting room, where his father called him an embarrassment. And so he could learn to be a man, he was then sent off to Eton, where the adults were cruel. And the pupils were also cruel. But he did his work so that he wouldn't be an embarrassment, and so his parents might love him and call him good. And when he finished at Eton, he went to university and learned about asset valuation, depreciation, and inventory valuation. And when he finished university, he became a chartered accountant and joined an accountancy firm, and he sat behind a simple but well-organized desk with his name on a small plaque, where he spent several hours a day reviewing and updating ledger books, just like his parents had expected him to. And he thought, surely now my parents will love me and call me good. And every once in a while, his mother would send him a letter in which she would inform him that his younger brother, who had been permitted to learn musical instruments and to attend social gatherings and dance waltz with girls from well-to-do families, since nothing was expected of him, was so very well liked at university and so very popular in political circles, and that he had already caught the eye of the attractive daughter of a wealthy, influential member of the Tory party, and that they were so very, very proud of how much the younger brother had already accomplished. And that was all. And this man, this chartered accountant, sat quietly at his well-organized desk, wearing a simple, clean, business-like, unremarkable brown suit. And he tried to remember those days as a boy in Neverland, when he had lovely adventures, when he was happy. But he remembered that it was at the orphanage where Peter had blown fairy dust on him so that he could fly to Neverland. And so, the chartered accountant started taking nighttime walks that would just happen to pass by his orphanage. And he would look up at the window he had flown out of so long ago. Not that he had any expectations, not any hopes at all, really. But one night, as he walked by the orphanage, he heard a little voice from the window above. It was Peter's voice. He was sure of it. Once I blow the fairy dust on you, you'll be able to fly with me to Neverland. And soon, the accountant saw one squealing, giggling boy after another fly out of the window, and then Peter started winging away. But some of that fairy dust fell as they went. And the accountant felt that dust touch his face like tiny snowflakes, and he closed his eyes, and he let the dust sting his eyelids. And when he finally opened his eyes, the accountant realized his feet were no longer on the ground. He was rising higher and higher, past the open window of the orphanage, and then past the rooftops. And soon enough, he was high enough to see the whole city. And he squealed and giggled, and he looked at the stars and shouted, "Second to the right and straight on till morning." Though he was quite aware at this point that morning would be several days away. And what would you have thought if you had looked up that night and seen a laughing, whooping, chartered accountant in an unimpressive brown suit flying towards Neverland? Would you have thought, "Oh, good for you, Mr. Chartered Accountant. I wish I could have grand adventures like, I wish I could have great adventures like you"? Or would you have rubbed your eyes and dismissed it immediately because you were an adult and you know quite well that chartered accountants definitely do not fly? And then this chartered accountant arrived in Neverland. Well, he knew he couldn't be a lost boy again, so what could he do then? Ah well, the greatest battles the lost boys were against the pirates. He could be a pirate, couldn't he? So he flew to Blackbeard's ship. He sat down on the deck amongst the scurvy dogs, and he told Blackbeard that he wanted to join his crew. So Blackbeard made him prove his worth by tossing him a sword, and he was immediately set upon by 3 members of the crew. It was a bloody, sweaty, messy row. But there was no match for the accountant, trained and beaten. And eventually he dispatched all 3. His suit was sliced and torn, his face bloodied, but his worth had been proven. And so he joined Blackbeard's crew. He soon became Blackbeard's bosun, and he was good at it. And the chartered accountant, pirate, sailed the 7 seas and enjoyed many great adventures. And he was happy again for only the 2nd time in his life, almost as happy as during his childhood days in Neverland. But not long after, the pirates came across the Lost Boys and their leader, Peter Pan. And a great battle ensued. And soon the chartered accountant found himself face to face with Peter. While Peter wasn't excellent with the sword, the accountant was even better. And Peter found himself in mortal danger. But right before the accountant was about to run Peter through, he paused. And he remembered those days he had spent with Peter. flying in the clouds, swimming with mermaids and fighting by Peter's side. And he smiled at Peter and opened his arms and said, "Don't you remember me, Peter? Haven't we had so much fun together?" And with a quick flick of his wrist, Peter swung his sword and sliced off the accountant's hand. Then Peter picked up the bloody hand, tossed it over the side where a hungry crocodile was waiting, hoping for some fresh meat to come his way. Then Peter sneered and said, "If I ever met such a witless pirate before, I'm sure I would remember." And he let out a cockle-doodle-doo and flew off. Then the other pirates started to make fun of the accountant. "Need help tying your shoes?" they'd snicker. Or even, "What is the sound of one hand clapping, do you know?" And inside him, an anger festered and grew. And finally, when one scurvy dog said to him, "Something's different about you, but I can't put my finger on it," the anger burst forth like a volcano. He grabbed his cutlass with his remaining hand, and he cut the dog through. And he rampaged through the ship, gutting and slicing any man who joked or snickered at his expense. And when the accountant was done, he stood on the deck and shouted, "Anyone says an insolent word or thinks an impertinent thought, it will be chum for the sharks." And no one dared speak, nor think. They just stood silently, shaking in their boots. Then he picked up a gaff hook that lay on the deck, tossed it to one of the pirates, and growled, "Fashion this into something I can use." And the pirate fashioned a hook to replace the hand of Blackbeard's bosun. And the bosun became the angriest, most dangerous pirate in Neverland. Soon Blackbeard felt he could no longer keep the bosun close at hand, because he became so afraid of the man. He gave him his own ship to captain, and his ferocity became known so far and wide that even Barbecue, the most feared pirate the world had come to know, came to fear the captain of the Hook. The name became so powerful that even the mention would cause the meanest man to tremble in fear. Captain of the Hook. Captain of the Hook. Captain of the Hook. Captain Hook. Captain Hook. Captain Hook. And his real name was... Damn, I can't remember. It's been too long, I can't remember. I can't remember at all. And it strikes me just now that as much as I hate him, and as much as I want to tell people to grow up and to avoid that irresponsible, selfish, forgetful little Peter Pan, I myself cannot.
There's another crocodile bellow, this one sounding rather loud and impatient.
I'll be right there. I'm finishing up a conversation.
He goes to the door, opens it a few inches, and talks to the unsounding crocodile.
Now look here. I know you want to get this done, but I can't just drop everything when you want. I have guests.
The crocodile grunts.
No, you can't eat them.
The crocodile grunts more insistent.
No, don't be rude. Why don't you write your own show, tell your own little story, and then you can eat your own audience. Mine is off the menu, do you hear?
The crocodile grunts unhappily.
Look, I'll make it up to you. I just made a delicious, rich damn cake, and it's all for you. Would you like that?
The crocodile grunts in the affirmative.
Excellent. I just have to do some finishing touches, make some closing remarks to these folks here, and I'll be right out. All righty?
The crocodile grunts happily and goes on.
All righty, very good. Ta-ta.
The hook closes the door.
Selfish beast. Thinks it's all about them.
He grabs the container and runs poison. Opens the container and shakes it all over the cake, sprinkling the cake with a liberal amount of green sugar.
This is for the crocodile. I have other plans for Peter Pan.
With a flourish, he puts on his sword belt and his coat and his hat.
two hats. All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
I can't. Hold on. Pretend that didn't happen. Avast belay when I appear, by fear they overtook. Notes, knots left upon your bones when you have shaken claws with book.
He picks up the cake and exits out the door, lights fade to black. The end. Thank you, Peter Boyer. Lord. All right. Captain
That was
Hook.
that.
Okay. We had a lot of fun doing this. When we were staging it the other night, it was just we worked in my place. So, but I was actually happy when we got here. They said we couldn't remove anything from the stage. I went, oh, it looks like his cabin. So, yes. So, anyway, so thank you all. I had a grand time doing this, and thank you, Melissa. So, would you like about the play?
Go ahead, Valerie, let me have it.
No, it was really enjoyable. I loved it. I only had one thing that I.
Of course you do.
Then one thing, I think if that German section could go. You know, I mean, I like the material, but it's confusing as an audience member. All of a sudden, there's this German professor. You know, it's like what? I think that the information still could be the pirate. You know, but anyway, it got confusing, and I was wondering, why do we even need this? That's the only thing that I thought. Everything else, I just loved it. I just loved the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's a section I would have to look at if we had the opportunity to really put it on its feet and see how it works visually. Because it's the part where I basically talk about Peter Pan being a narcissistic sociopath.
But you can demonstrate.
Yeah, well,
Right.
so I'll think about it.
Okay.
So, well, these are things I tell you. When when I'm working on a playwright on an original play, we go through things, and I will say to the playwright, this doesn't seem to be working, you know, or this works really well, but this doesn't seem to be working. Then we play with it, and then all of a sudden, you know, well, not all of a sudden, but after so long, you go, oh, you know what? Bye. So, or this needs more. Okay, so I mean, you know, that's why we have these readings, so that the playwright can hear what the audience thinks and feels about it, and is it engaging? So, so that's an interesting point, Valerie.
I also love it.
I do understand it. Like it does feel like it slows down there. And like I said, it's one of those things where I don't know if it slows down, if it would still feel that way once all the other stuff was like.
Well, and it's kind of, to me, it was jarring in that if there were other characters that came in, you know, but it's.
Well, we have we do have the professor bit earlier on, but it's not a different accent.
Right.
So he does take on the guys of
Well,
somebody
that's
else.
true, that's true.
Yeah, but
No, you can finish.
okay. Yeah, but the thing is, I agree with Valerie in that it was when I was reading it, I thought that because there's no other accents, there are characters, but you know, that was just one of the things.
It's one of those things I think if we were able to really stage it and have a little bit of time to play with it and then kind of go, okay, does it go on the chopping block or does it get changed so that it gets tightened up or not using the
Right.
the German voices like that, but.
I love the audience interaction too. Yeah.
I guess my favorite part.
I love that.
So,
I too. I was gonna say. I truly loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't have the same issue with the German. I actually liked it because it was something different. So it gave a little
Okay.
bit of
Uh-huh.
levels and other characters to being brought in. And from a performer's perspective, it's great to have changes in the middle of a very long one-person show. My only critique or only suggestion maybe towards the end is when Hook is retelling the story of his life at the end. There's a lot of repetition of what occurred
Yeah.
before that could be just alluded to as a reminder because we all just heard it. So there might be little
Yeah.
places there to tighten up where instead of saying the full
yeah,
story again, you
maybe
could
you
just
say, and
allude
to
to it.
summarize or something, you know, just, I agree.
Right, just something that, oh, and then entered Peter, and we know how that turned out. Like, there's
Uh-huh.
just a little tightening at the end, but I think overall, just a lovely piece. Lovely piece.
Anybody else? Yes, oh, see.
Love the chartered accountants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you chuckling.
They gave a character, I mean, I think so many of us identify with somebody like that. I could have been a pirate, I could have been a lost boy,
Yeah.
I ended up a chartered accountant. And the detail about, because I've actually worked a lot with that in that area, I recognize a lot of the details.
Well, I had thought about like, what is the job I would at least want to have? That's the thing. And actually, that's John Cleese was almost a chartered accountant. So I think maybe part of the inspiration. And then then there was a lot of like, what is a chartered accountant?
Yeah,
So like finding out.
yeah, great.
And I, yeah.
Again, I do have a friend who is an accountant who actually loves being an accountant and dreams of numbers.
I
So-
know,
Bless
it's
them.
just,
So I'm waiting for the, if this gets a further life, I'm waiting for the one day when somebody who's very happily an accountant comes in and goes, what is
Any other comments or anything like that? Peter, do you have any questions? Go, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I thought it was really funny throughout and enjoyable throughout. And then I also really liked at the end when you started telling the story and you saw that shift to a more poignant, sort of, not emotional, but more, from a more serious place. And I thought that worked really well and it wasn't over, that could have been really overdone, but it wasn't. I think
Right.
It was like, the subtlety was really
Yeah, I like the fact that, you know, that we get to see into Hook, okay? And it's so funny because we had this whole discussion about how Hook's the hated character and everything like that. And I disagreed. I said, I've always loved Hook. I've always loved Hook. So, I mean, he's what makes it, you know? I mean, if you watch any of the movies, you know, when Steven Spielberg did it, you know, and with Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman was brilliant, okay? And when they did the other movie with the actually teenage children who did it, I think it was Humphreys, I can't remember his first name, who played Peter Pan, and Jason Isaac played Hook, well, which I confess that I thought he was hot.
As do we all.
So, yeah. I mean, even in the cartoon, the animated, the Disney version, I mean, you couldn't help but like him. So, and I thought it was very telling, you know, about Peter Pan, you know, I mean, the kid was cruel.
Well, obviously, I read the book.
Yeah, so did I.
What is wrong?
Yeah. He tries to run off,
It's terrible.
he tries to run off with Wendy's daughter.
Yeah.
So, but it just, when I first came across this, when I hadn't read the play until Peter sent in, you know, the 10 minutes. the 10 minutes.
The clip.
And I read the clip of it, and I actually wanted to include it in the pre-fall, but I was overruled. And so I read the whole thing, and unfortunately for all of us, it qualified in the top 10 plays that were done. We've actually done all 10 of the plays that qualified for readings. And I read it, and I went, oh, I'm so doing this. So, and then I had the idea from Melissa, because I worked with Melissa in pre-fall, and I went, oh, she's so, oh my God, she's so perfect for Captain. And in the script, I mean, in the intro, Peter does say, you know, it can be portrayed by a female, you know, male or female, and it could,
As an actor, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I loved you that part. And then I'm watching, but I'm watching Melissa and I'm thinking, I could never do this.
Imagine being her little sister.
I could never do it as good.
She just captured the flamboyance, but she also captured, you know, how hurt he was, how disappointed, and I mean, just she embodied his, you know, humaneness. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and you know, the humor that he needed. So, I would love to see his own. I'd love to see Mr. Bones and you know, and just everything, and just it would just make it even more three-dimensional. So, do you have any questions in the audience or anything like that? No.
Thank you all for sticking around.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this was a marathon for me, you know, doing all this and doing, you know, the 4/1 acts, but I really envisioned seeing all 4/1 acts done in one day, so.
Do you foresee at the festival all 4 acts in one evening?
Not necessarily.
Oh, good.
No, I just, because the thing is, it's difficult to find a place, you know, it's difficult to find a place and to put them with, you know, on full length, you know.
Oh,
what is
sure.
that? So I put them all in one day, and the only one I actually ran over was the second one. It says in this, on my pages, it says 18 pages, but it doesn't say that it's single line monologues and dialogues, you know, throughout these 18 pages. So it wound up running, instead of the 20 minutes that I envisioned, 40 minutes. So that's what happened. And then, of course, you have to have a discussion afterwards,
Of course.
especially with that play. So, but I felt that, you know, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I think in an evening, you know, all 4 of them would be just too much.
Oh, way too much,
Yeah.
way too much.
Yeah.
So to me, you know, this is a full-length 1 act, okay? It's a full-on 1 act, because it runs about an hour, okay?
Lovely.
And so you pair it with another, you know, another one act. You do, you know, maybe, you know, act 1 and then a break and then another one,
Right.
so.
It was originally, the original idea was possibly like a fringe show. I know a lot of times fringes will have like a limit around an hour or something like that. So that was kind of the original idea of the length I was thinking.
If you do put it on Capitol Fringe, please advertise it. I would love to see it put out.
Okay.
Absolutely love. So you're going, our Peter could do this,
I'm
right?
now part of Peter's marriage, so
Okay.
where he goes, I'm taking him.
That's dangerous because I originally wrote it with myself in mind, but I really love the idea of somebody not looking like me at all taking it. So I'd be like, I don't know what to do.
Well, the line's about the idea of J.M. Barrie saying it could be portrayed by a woman, or even more poignant that it's a
Right.
woman. So that there's a great humor in that.
Yeah, the thing is, when I read it, I was trying to think, who could play this role? Who could play this role? And then, again, I saw Melissa doing the one, you know, the free fall, and I went, so.
But I did love having Melissa on board, because I kind of wanted to have it, the visual I had in my head was somebody looking like me, and I really wanted to see what would happen, because I wanted it to be something that anybody could take. And then what happens if it does? Does stuff like that resonate in an interesting way? So
You got lucky. She's pretty fantastic.
yes.
Okay,
I just want to give a shout out to Melissa.
yes, again.